Now, at the time that you're starting with all these bands, you're 13 years old. Your brother, by my count, should be about 11, 12 years old at the time.
Yeah.
And you guys have done a whole ton of stuff together, including Night Shall Drape Us. Was he with you from the beginning?
And not from the beginning. It was like I had few projects with same group of friends, which we started. And at the same time, my brother started learning to play the guitar back at home. And at some point, he just proposed that we should form a band together because he has done some like riffing and learned to play the guitar. And we started it that I played the drums and he played the guitar. And it didn't take long that he took on the drums and I continued with the guitar and vocals because he was very natural with the drums at the moment. So it became very clear that there's no point me playing the drums. That is one of the instruments I'm very shitty at. I can play them a bit, and if I need some for my own projects, I can play myself. But I'm very much below mediocre player in drums.
Greetings, Legion. Thank you for joining me on another episode of Into the Necrosphere. This is episode 233, in case you're counting, and I am very pleased to be joined by the infamous and notorious Spellgoth of the band Horna, also of the band Night Shall Drape Us, and one of the topics of conversation that we explored over the course of about an hour and 15 minutes worth of conversation was how that Night Shall Drape Us record came about. It's called Lunatic Choir, for those that don't know. It was released on Season of Mist. And then we got into a host of other topics, probably a couple of things that will take folks by surprise, but I certainly enjoyed every single second of the conversation. I am very confident that most of you will as well. Before we get to that, though, Coldborn are a band who I premiered on this podcast a couple of weeks ago. I absolutely love their debut record, The Unwritten Pages of Death, but I feel like it's not quite getting the level of attention that it deserves. So I figured, to get us warmed up for this installment of the show, I'm going to remind you of why I think this band is so fucking cool. I'm going to play you a track off of their debut record. It's called Cornucopia Hungers for More. Cornucopia Hungers for More is the name of the track. The band is Coldborn, and that is taken off their fantastic debut album, The Unwritten Pages of Death, available right now for your listening, potentially purchasing pleasure on Bandcamp. If you do head over there and you buy yourself anything, then let the lads in Coldborn know who sent you. My friends, as some of you may know, I am a member of an elite unit of podcast creators who are known on the streets as the horsemen of the podcasting apocalypse, dedicated to bringing you high-quality entertainment from Monday to Sunday, starting with Horrorwolf 666 every second Monday, hosted by the inimitable Brandon Legion. Yours truly casts hexes and slays poses on Into the Necrosphere every Tuesday, and then on a Wednesday, the Sensei Mike Hill brings you another episode of Everything Went Black. We double your pleasure every Wednesday, or every other Wednesday, I should say, with Iblis Manifestations. That is hosted by Cheyenne of the band Trivax. And then on a Thursday, Mike Hill returns with the podcast that I absolutely do not miss, come what may. The podcast is Necromaniacs, and Mike is joined by his co-hosts, Sheriff Mike Scandado and Professor Jeff Kashid, to review old and new horror movies. And then finally, every Thursday and every Sunday, the Sinister Minister, Carl Hikara, takes you on a curated journey through the dark, the weird, the arcane, and the esoteric with his podcast, Soul Knocks, rounding out a lineup to end all lineups. So thank you very much for all of the support that you have shown this podcast. Thanks for all the support that you show to all of the Horsemen. It is greatly appreciated. For me personally, when I see the shares and I see all the enthusiasm and all the energy behind this show, it just motivates me to try and put out something that's better and better every week for all of you guys. If you stick around after my conversation with Spellgoth, I'm going to talk to you about 3 releases that I think should be high up on your rotation, including the new Akhlys record, and then I am rounding up the latest singles by the likes of Deceased and others for judgment on my weekly news rant. So stick around for that, but first, join me in welcoming the one, the only Spellgoth to Into the Necrosphere. I was while I was preparing for this interview, I was kind of reminding myself just how many bands you actually play in right now. And you're a very prolific musician. I'm kind of getting the impression your day starts when you wake up at 6 a.m., work, band practice, bed 4 a.m., and then 2 hours later you're back up for the next day. Like what? How do you balance everything that you've got going on at the moment?
Actually, it is quite simple at the moment, as I do all my work from home and I can basically do my own schedules for the work. I work as a graphic designer mostly. Then I do some bar jobs and something else what I can find. So basically it's easy to fit everything. And for example, we don't rehearse that much. So we usually end up rehearsing if we need to rehearse something. But most of the time we don't enter the rehearsal place. If there's no point for that, we don't usually go jamming or something. Those days are, for some reason, they are in the past, and we with all our bands, we make the basics for the albums all by ourselves at the time we have at our hand, and then we discuss about it, we bounce around the ideas, and then we start recording usually.
And you say, judging by what you just mentioned now about it's not the way it used to be, has that changed from what it was like when you started? Was a lot of your earlier music written in the band room with other musicians, with your fellow bandmates present?
Of course, when we started in very early age, like when we were 13, and we couldn't play our instruments. So of course we had to play together to figure out everything, how to play the instrument, how to create the songs, and that. And at some point when we started like when we became adults and the life took us to different cities and everything. We had to learn different kinds of methods to do our music. So it just went to that direction that everybody does their parts like whenever they feel like. And then if we need to bounce around the ideas, then we do something. We bounce the songs. Everybody records their parts at home or the rehearsal places. And then we just patch around how it becomes a full song, and that's about it.
Yeah. Out of interest, was that something that had already started to happen before COVID happened, or was the COVID craziness and, being forced to be at home?
No.
Did that change the way that you work?
No. It was way much earlier. Like I said, when we became adults and we started working with jobs and everything, so the time was like an issue about everything, like trying to fit all the adult life with the music and everything.
In with the rest of the bands. You mentioned you were 13 when you started your first band?
Yeah.
Jesus. And what style of music were you doing at the time?
It was metal music, varied. We started with some cover songs of like Sepultura. There was some then some punk songs, of course, and quite early, I think, on the brink of turning 14, we started to play black metal.
Mm. So what was your earliest memory or your earliest experience with music that you can recall?
What would it be? It's very early, like listening to some like children's songs from the radio or from the cassette. And yeah, cannot like place it how old I was when I heard. Can have a like earliest memory of music, but yeah, I remember some like children's songs from very early age.
And how old were you when you discovered metal?
What was I? I think I was probably 10, 11 or something, around that age.
And at that point, could you already? Because I know you mentioned when you were starting your band, you couldn't really play your instrument, but had you already attempted to play a musical instrument prior to getting into metal, or was that something?
I played piano and rehearsed playing piano, but I went to like proper school for that, and because of the music there, we played like old style songs, started learning like minuets and all the Bach stuff and everything that like that. And it wasn't something at that age that would like inspire me that much. So it was very hard to try to learn the songs because you didn't like have the songs in you. Nowadays, when I like, if I want to play, for example, a cover song, it's already like a song I know, and it's very easy to pick up. And it's something that inspires me to like move on with that song or do something with that song. So it's the learning process for that is like talking about like young age. It would like many young people probably would benefit from that the schools would like find the right music for everybody that would inspire them, and they'll find their way and give that spark to learn how to become like some kind of mastering their instrument in that kind of through the songs they really like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would 100% agree with you on that. My mom was a music teacher, and when I first became interested in learning to play the guitar, she offered to teach me to play. And when the first song that she wanted me to play was "Amazing Grace," that was when I tapped out. So,
yeah, but then again,
Amazing Grace isn't fucking hostile. We're listening to do different things. Yeah,
but I mean, when I was like very young, I used to sing in church, in our local church and everything. It was like something because I always like loved singing, and it was like I didn't know the kind of concept of a religion during that age. and it was something that where I could do that.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, I don't know how old you were when you turned away from the church, but I mean, I grew up in a church or going to church, and the one thing that I remember very vividly about church, going back to a very young age, whether it was the singing, whether it was really anything to do with church, I just knew that it wasn't for me. I always felt completely and utterly out of place. You know, even at the age of 4 or 5 years old, I can remember specific moments sitting there, you know, watching people with their hands up singing and stuff like that, and just going like, this is just not, like, every fiber of my being was just saying, this is not for you. There's some pluses to it, you know, people that I met over, you know, that I'm still in contact with over time, but it was very much, I knew that this was definitely not going to be part of my future. How long were you involved in or attending church?
Well, in Finland, it's mandatory for like up until you are 15 if you are like baptized.
Jesus, I didn't know that.
Yeah. It is like the school. You have like we have the teaching of religion, and there's like certain mandatory church goings like on Christmas time and like that. If you are still part of the church, and then after you turn 15, you can like apply to relieve yourself from the books of the church, and that's what I did when I got to the age. I straight went to on my it was probably my birthday when I went and like resigned from the church.
So you have to tender a formal resignation to say, okay,
yeah. You have to write the papers, and there's like some kind of minister who is asking some few questions, but it is just a formality basically.
Yeah. Is that a practice that's still common today?
Yeah, Finland is very much. I would say Finland is not that religious country in a certain way. But we are holding very tightly to like old habits. That's the thing. It is like many people who go to the church, they are not believers. They don't believe in that kind of like God or anything. But it's just an like habit which their like parents used to do, and it's like the Christmas church. Everything is like just something that they are still doing for the old habits.
So is there, aside from the religious side of things, is there still a lot of traditions that you know are very, I guess, very old school or very commonplace in Finland that come from generations gone by?
Well, it's midsummer now. So for example, it is here in Finland, it's, what is it, like little past 9, the clock is now, and you can see how bright it is.
Yeah.
It won't go darker than this the whole night. And it is like some midsummer rituals are very common, like to burn a big bonfire, like have the sauna and the midsummer things. Then we have like during the Walpurgis, we have it is kind of the workers celebration, like which they are having, and that's very typical for Finnish to have like holiday on then and celebrate on the streets. And there are few, but like as a Finnish country, Finnish people, we are like still a very young nation, so we don't have that much of our own traditions yet built.
Now, when it comes to learning how to play the piano or going down that musical route, what was it that took you down there? Was it your parents that made you do it? Was it the church? What made you? What got you into doing the lessons or being part of that school?
I was pretty musical. I'd say, like on a very young age, I attended every possible, like on a kindergarten and everything like that. If there's some music involved, I was very into it and sang and played like whatever I could get my hands on. And of course, then my parents asked that would I like to like start learning something, and I answered yes, and music has been always like interesting me as long as I can remember.
And you have a very broad taste in music as well. I mean, I've seen interviews where you talk about loving him, for example.
Yeah.
I know on your SG7 solo stuff, you covered Q Lazarus, which I want to talk to you about, because I have for years and years and years been completely obsessed with the song that you covered. But it's I as you're talking, I could kind of see similarities and maybe our thinking around music, because it's always been about music. I've had periods of my life where I've been quite wedded to death metal or to black metal, but generally speaking, I've always been interested in music just as a whole, right? It doesn't really matter what style it is. If it speaks to me, then I'm immediately interested in it. Has that always been the case for you?
Of course, like probably with everybody, they have a certain point of their life, mostly on their teenagers, that they are very strict about the music and
very
what
orthodox.
They are. And of course, like the metal community is somewhat like and I fucking hated the fucking metal brotherhood and everything, like being a metalhead or something. I never understood the concept of that if we listen to that same kind of music, that we should be like brothers or something. That doesn't like fucking mean to me. It means nothing to me that we listen to the same music. We have to find like common ground somewhere else. Of course, we can start discussing. It's a good conversation starter and that kind of like, but it doesn't make us any brothers that we listen to the same kind of stuff. And yeah, for me, it's always like good song is a good song. It doesn't matter what genre it is or how is it made or who made it or anything.
Yeah, and I have always had an aversion to any kind of groupthink, anything that any activity or anything that I see as being a herd mentality. And sometimes, I have to kind of call myself out on being a bit of a hypocrite about it, because I think, there are benefits to it, there are positives to it, but I would never. As much as I'm into this music and as much as I consider myself part of at least a community, the community built up around this podcast, I certainly wouldn't ever think of myself as someone who has to, who needs that, or who needs kind of that. I think sometimes the reason why people fall in with those groups or those communities is they almost require some degree of validation in their thinking in order for them to act a certain way, or in order for them to in some ways it almost defines their lives and the way that they live their life, and that's just never worked for me. I've got a reflexive dislike of anything like that, whether it's in a religious sense, in the metal scene, politically, anything. I can't stand it.
Yeah, maybe it is like kind of most of my life I'm in a certain way, I am an like outcast outside of everything, even though I'm very, very social and outgoing person that I can make friends easily. I can talk about like basically every topic ever. I'm like that. But then again, on the other hand, I'm really, really, really like a misanthrope. I really want to see the like mankind to end, because I treat humanity as a cancer. It is like a mutation out of this like cycle of like life that we bring nothing to it. We are just consuming and everything. So, well, then again, I'm that kind of person also that I realize that what is to my own benefit, that I won't like throw sticks to my own wheels just on purpose. So I can navigate myself through the life pretty easily, and then again have good conversations and meet up people easily.
Yeah, it's again, I can definitely relate to that. I can very quickly build a rapport with somebody that I don't know in a one-to-one setting. I'm fine. I tend to kind of slink back into the shadows when I'm in a group setting. I don't like being in big groups. I'm not somebody that can go to a bar and work my way around the room. I've never enjoyed that. And again, similar to you, I kind of have this aversion to humanity at large. But then again, I find myself very easily being able to become friendly or even friends with somebody that that I've met that's new. It's almost like you sort of an extrovert and an introvert at the same time. I don't know if that makes sense to you.
Basically.
Have you always been that way?
I might say that when I was younger, I was pretty shy, but probably it was because of the I presented music like in church to the audience and everything, so I had to overcome the shyness that I was in a certain way. Either I still don't want to be the focal point on stage or anything, even though I'm the singer, and for some reason everybody is usually pointing out the singer, and I don't want to be. It's like I get nothing basically out of it being the point of interest in somewhere.
Being the focal point.
Yeah. Because for me, it's always the bigger picture is the music, and we are just part of the music and the energy which is there. And it's not about our egos or our what we are as humans or anything.
Yeah. But you are a very distinctive personality, though. I mean, we've only been talking for a short while. I could already pick it up. You can see it in interviews and stuff. You've got and it's just an observation of mine. I'm not trying to blow smoke or anything, but you've got a natural charisma to you, a natural draw, which is why people will naturally focus on you when it comes to really anything that you're involved in.
Yeah.
So when did the switch from normal metal, Sepultura and the like, when did it switch to black metal? What was the band you discovered in the moment that you kind of went down that road? Because that ultimately has become kind of your main voice musically as you've grown older.
If I get it correctly, that I didn't hear any with the side ear, was probably there was a little bit of Impaled Nazarene at the end of this dubbed cassette. There was Carcass hard work album recorded for me by my friend, and it was a used cassette so somebody had recorded already on that cassette something, and there was when the hard work album stopped, there was a little part of Impaled Nazarene after that, and that was my first contact with black metal, and I was pretty much sold to that sound instantly.
Can you remember the song or the album?
It was Ugra Karma album.
Okay.
Which was on that, and we also had a radio show, quite running radio show in Finland, which also played it's on the national radios. So they had this extreme music show there once a week, and they had at some point they started run the 20-minute 15-minute part of the show was only for black metal and extreme death metal. And but I think it was before I found something out of that I heard that Impaled Nazarene Ugra Karma part, and I was still 13 years old, and I was about to turn 14 years old, and I got sold instantly to that black metal sound.
Yeah, my discovery of Impaled Nazarene was at the end of an episode of Headbangers Ball, when they used to have Into the Pit, and they would have the death and black metal stuff on there, and they played Carmageddon Warriors, and to me that was just fucking hell, this is. I was already into a lot of different black metal at the time, but this was just something that it sort of had that anarchic feeling of bands like Motorhead when they're at their absolute best, and then the violence of Marduk, and it was just such a rush hearing it. The video is crazy. You've got I can't remember the vocalist's name, but you've got him doing those sounds in between, when they're doing the last kind of blasting at the end. Fucking fantastic song. Yeah. But yeah, I was sold instantly after I heard that the first time.
And of course, my hometown, which I'm originally from, had a already established very there was already black metal underground in that city because Baratrum was at the time was based on the same city that I was living in. So it was easy ground to find new bands through them, and also, of course, seeing them live play there, because it was at the time Baratrum was very, very good live with the like bones and everything, like real what black metal should be.
Mm-hmm. And of course, you guys also had in Finland, you had Beherit, and you had a lot of those kind of classic bands, from the Finnish scene. Beherit, I remember speaking to Sammy from Gotor, and I mean, he's a fucking huge fan of that. And it's a band that tends to crop up in places that you don't expect it.
Yeah.
You'll talk to somebody in a black metal band, like very weirdly, very often it's somebody in a US black metal band, and you'll ask them about their influences, and Beherit will be one of the first names that they bring up. A real, massively underrated influence, I think.
Yeah. I really love, like, for me, Throwing Down the Moon is one of the best black metal albums ever. But then again, I never wanted to do that style of black metal. It's not something that like is. I feel like I would be able to do that kind of riffing. It's not my style, but I still like value it one of the like best black metal albums ever.
Mm-hmm.
It's very different from what I do myself or what I like to do myself.
Yeah, but I think it's I think when you listen to a wide variety of music, not just within a set genre, I do think that it some of those influences will still come out and manifest themselves in certain ways. I think if I go over some of the stuff you've listened to or you've played on, so even if I go back to something like the Baptism album, that to me, I was listening to that again today. It's fucking fantastic, and it still sounds so good, even though it's 8 years. It's about 8 years old now, is it not?
then again, Baptism was never. I didn't write anything except like few synth lines for Baptism. I was only a like live member in that band, and it was So that's. But then again, I really enjoyed that style of black metal also. It's like especially the latest album, it like came to the peak of where it like maybe it would have come even better from that, but I'm really in a certain way I'm glad that that's the like last album, well, at the moment. But
now at the time that you're starting with all these bands, you're 13 years old. Your brother, by my count, should be about 11, 12 years old at the time. And you guys have done a whole ton of stuff together, including Nightshell Drape. Was he with you from the beginning?
And not from the beginning. It was like I had few projects with same group of friends, which we started. And at the same time, my brother started learning to play the guitar back at home. And at some point, he just proposed that we should form a band together because he has done some like riffing and learned to play the guitar. And we started it that I played the drums and he played the guitar. And it didn't take long that he took on the drums and I continued with the guitar and vocals, because he was very natural with the drums at the moment. So it became very clear that there's no point me playing the drums. That is one of the instruments I'm very shitty at. I can play them a bit, and if I need some for my own projects, I can play it myself, but I'm very much below mediocre player in drums.
Yeah, I have attempted it. I'm reasonable at playing guitar. I mean, I'm not Trey Azagthoth, but I'm reasonable. I can play a couple of riffs. Yeah. I've attempted to play drums and I cannot fucking do it. I have an incredible amount of admiration for people that are good at doing it. I'll spend hours and hours and hours watching drum videos just because I'm so awestruck by how good some of those players are. But it's just, it's that saying about, you might love the sport, but the sport doesn't love you back. It's kind of the same thing. I love the instrument, but the instrument for sure doesn't love me back. Yeah. What was your relationship like with your brother when you were growing up?
Well, during when everybody knows that when you are young, even the like 1 year of age difference can make a big difference. So we had like different friends. But when we became like 13, 14, then we started, and because we found that the same style of, well, now we come to the same style of music, same style friends. So we ended up with the same group of friends and started hanging out together. And we've been hanging around together like ever since. So before that, we didn't have so much common ground in a certain way. We played football in the same team, even though he was like a year younger. But then again, we had like different kind of like interests in a certain way. But through the music, we like really found each other and been like hanging out ever since.
Is it just the two of you growing up?
What?
Was it just the two of you growing up?
Two of us, you mean like brothers?
Yeah, do you guys have other brothers, other sisters?
No, just the two of us.
Just the two of you. And how close are you now?
Very, very close. We live in the same city, even though we moved out of our home city. So we've been living in the same cities whole up like life. When I moved out of our hometown, it didn't take long that he moved to the same city that I was living in. But it wasn't the reason that I was living there. There was different reasons, but we ended up living in the same city.
I've always been very curious about this, the sibling relationship in bands. I spoke to Aaron Weaver about this, Aaron from Wolves on the Throne Room, about his relationship with his brother Nathan. And I think part of my fascination comes from, growing up with Pantera and just being a huge fan of that band. And as I was saying to him, you watch Dimebag and Vinny play together, and that connection that those two guys have is fucking incredible. And I don't personally think any amount of rehearsing, nothing is going to be able to replicate that. There's just something about being that connected with somebody, growing up with somebody, knowing that person inside and out, that just, when it clicks and you're playing together, something magical happens. Do you kind of feel when you're playing music with your brother, do you kind of feel that same sense of connection?
Basically, yes. It is very, very, very easy. Like I played with different drummers throughout the years in different bands, and playing with my brother is like it's so easy. I can like rely on everything. I just feel the backbeat like coming, and it's the groove he makes is just the same way basically that I would do if I could play the drums. So I can feel really the beat is the same way that I could do it. I would do it if I had the possibility or like abilities to do it. That so it's easy to like move on with the music with that beat and how it like evolves with that.
So when you're on stage, he's the guy that you're listening out for cues on when to come in to certain bits.
On stage, for example, I go with pure instinct. I basically don't listen anything on stage. I always because like I said, we don't rehearse. We don't play that much together. Like only on live. So for me, it's always there's a part of it that I want to keep it also that way, because I want to go out with my pure instincts and not relying on something that I learned beforehand in that.
Yeah.
If it make any sense. And sometimes it pays off, sometimes it doesn't. But it's like that's my interpretation of black metal. Is like it's pure instinct, and I want to go with that as long as I will do that.
You kind of want to have that spontaneity.
Yes,
that feeling of spontaneity.
Basically, I won't sing a gig like twice the same way, for example.
Yeah. So, what was can you remember the first gig that you played?
Yeah, it was when I was third. Not outside of the church gigs and all of that.
Yeah.
School.
No gigs for Jesus. I'm like proper gigs.
And school place and everything, but it was like when I was 13 with my first band, we played few of those cover songs in the youth center which we were rehearsing at. So it was like some 20 people and played to them.
And were you doing vocals by that point?
Yeah, played the bass and did the vocals.
How did it feel being on stage? I mean, as somebody who had previously or had grown up feeling quite shy, like what was it like being in front of those people and kind of putting yourself out there in that way?
Of course, there was some butterflies in the stomach, but it was quite natural because it was like, again, already in certain way, I felt that it is let the music do the speaking, that I'm here not for myself, not gaining some kind of personal glory, even though on the teenagers we still had some kind of like ideas of taking over the world with the music and having some money from the music and conquering the world with the music. But it's like I pretty much very fast grew up out of that kind of like conception of like music and became more and more aware of that idea that I will do my parts, that I let the music do the speaking, and I'm only a kind of like vessel in between that.
Where did that thinking come from, or I guess how did you come to that realization or that philosophy about performance and about, you know, the way that you approach performing music live and I would assume making music in the studio as well?
I don't know. That's the way I feel, and very hard to say where it has come like that. But probably just when reading about the big bands and about their battles with the egos and everything, and fucking up things with the like when the egos clash and everything. That when you let the human part of yourself to be part of that equation, it can like fuck up good things. Well, all the great empires have been crumbling down because of human egos.
Yeah. Well,
like,
I mean, you human ego, the male ego, I would say in particular. I mean, with women, it's probably a different issue, but with the male ego has been a very destructive force in the lives of formerly incredibly successful men. You know, it's like I was talking to somebody the other day about Narcos, and you know, he was saying, you know, great show, but it's always the same shit. You know, guy gets very, very rich, very successful, and then, you know, ego gets the better of him, everything fucks up. But it's like that's within a criminal context, but it's really true of men in so many other walks of life. There's that one. There's that one element that always stays the same. It's like the ego is always your undoing.
Yeah. And for me, it's been very clear for many years now that I in any way don't want to be like, basically, don't let my human part be like part of this, what I do with music or art in general. I want to wash it away from the equation as much as it is possible. I just want to like be the vessel carrying something greater than I am.
So how do you manage to do that? Because I have a very specific, I think there's a very specific inflection point in my life where my ego was brought down to earth, and where I had, and I've spoken about it on the podcast before, I think I refer to it as a humbling force. But for me, when I started doing Thai boxing, that was one of the biggest changes in my life. Got my temper under control, really got my ego under control. And I've advocated since very strongly for young men to be, you know, to do martial arts of some sort, because I feel like every boy, every man needs a humbling force in their life. There's nothing more humbling than knowing that you could have a great week this week in the gym, and the next week there's somebody that's going to come in there and going to beat the fuck out of you. If you're not fully on top of your game, it's a great leveler. So that's kind of what I mean about, you know, what is it in your life? What's the force in your life that keeps you humble?
I don't. Is there such force? Because for example, when I was young, I didn't like end up in fights or anything because I've always like realized the fact that there will be always a bigger guy than I am that will set myself to the place. There will be always a greater force that will crush you, even how hard you try. You will, if it takes that you are an old fragile fuck, something will break your bones at some point if you are cocky or anything. And I don't know, did I ever have any that kind of like special moment or epiphany of the thing that I should be humble or anything like, or because I never had the urge or anything to put myself on a pedestal or something. I never been interested in that kind of shit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and again, I think, I mean, it's not necessarily a case of putting yourself on a pedestal or such, but I do think just there's a natural male ego, and it needs to be kept in check. And I think as a frontman for a band that's as adored as Horna, it's admirable that you're and I mean, I get it from you in this conversation that you can keep yourself very grounded and very centered throughout all of that. So, what was the first record that you recorded? Like the first time you went into the into the recording studio, and actually was recording music. What was the first thing you ever did?
Well, there was some home recordings, of course, and demos and that kind of stuff. But it was Trollheimsgrot. Bizarre Troll Technology was the first real album that was recorded and in a real studio. And it's one of the only albums I've been recording in a real studio, because like basically all of our stuff have been recorded like in a homemade studios or by ourselves and like that.
And that Trollheimsgrot record that was put out in 2001, so you'd have been about 19 at the time?
Yeah, something like that, if I remember correctly, the first one. Yeah.
Was it exciting being in a studio, or like in a proper studio like that?
Of course it was like experience to do it like that. Well, then again, it was like very, very, very how would I say it, kind of like homemade studio still, even though it was like real studio. So basically the guy was living there, and we had very like laid back, like grilling on the evening and just normal living and recording on daytimes few hours. But it is, we had like all the songs ready and rehearsed, and only like few minor adjustments what we did with the songs in the studio. I really can't understand people who go to the studio and make the songs in the studio. That's weird idea for me.
Yeah, sorry, carry on.
Yeah. For me, it's the studio is just the means to get the like music on a tape or something to like produce it to streaming or CD or LP or anything. That studio is for me. I could never like start composing in the studio.
I've often read articles like that when these guys are saying, "Oh yeah, we're in the studio for the next 4 months writing the new album." I thought to myself, my thinking is always like, that's just not cost efficient. You're paying for the shit by the hour most likely, or at least in chunks of time. Do that in the rehearsal room if you need to get together and write, and just go in when you're ready to record.
Yeah, and it is. That's why I always realized that I need to have a like normal day job on the side of the music. I don't want to be reliable on the music side, because otherwise I would be like, at some point I would end up the situation that I would have to do something that I would like. It's not on my standards or something that I wouldn't like to do. Or it ends up just bad because I have certain kind of like time window, which I have to release something to get money out of it.
That was another big thing in my life as well. I was desperate to work in music when I was much younger, and I had an opportunity to work in PR for a record label that will remain nameless. But the girl that was doing the job at the time, that was leaving the role, said, I'll put in a good word for you, and there's a chance you'll get the job. But I'm just going to warn you right now, if you end up doing this within a year, you're going to hate this music. And it was such a eye opener for me, because I went back, I reflected on it, and my thinking was, if it's going to take, if music becomes a job, anything that becomes a job ultimately that you're reliant on for your bread and butter, you end up, I think, not treating with the same level of love and the same level of passion that you may have done if it was just a passion rather than your what helps you earn a crust. And that put me off the idea completely. I totally divorced myself from the idea of ever working in music right after that conversation, or about a couple of days after that conversation, because it was, for me, like I don't want to risk wrecking the love that I have for music, or wrecking the relationship that I have to the art, because it's now a job and something that I rely on to make money.
Yeah.
So, following on from Trollheim's Grot, you've also been involved in a whole bunch of other stuff. But I mentioned earlier, we were talking about Q Lazarus. Have you heard the story of Q Lazarus and of that song in particular?
What story are you talking about?
So Q Lazarus is a woman named Diane Lucky.
Yeah.
She was a taxi driver in New York. And she was taking Jonathan Demme, who was the director for Silence of the Lambs. She was driving him, somewhere in New York City, puts on a cassette, and he listens to it, and he goes, "Who's this?" And she says, "Oh, that's my band." And he loved it so much that he included it in Married with a Mob, which was a movie that he made a couple of years before Silence of the Lambs, and then, the most iconic scene, Buffalo Bill, like they had rehearsed that scene with a number of different songs, and then he was like, but that's actually the song that would work best, which I think is clearly what turned that song into the kind of iconic song that it is. But I've debated this so many times, and I know it's completely trite and trivial to do so, but I've thought about it so many times, like, does that song sound so creepy because of the scene, or is the song just creepy, period?
Yeah, I'd say it's a fucking good song, even though without the movie. It's that's why I did the cover songs, because I wanted to like strip down the song, like all the parts, and just to like figure out all the layers the song has. And that's why I did it. That's why I do the cover songs. Like when I want to like strip them down, and just to learn every like single layer of the song and what is inside the song. And
what is some of your favorite music outside of black metal?
Well, lately, for example, I've been listening mostly noise and industrial and power electronics. Then again, for example, outside of this all extreme music and everything, I fucking love like Norwegian röyksopp. For example, I listen to a lot of post-punk, like dark wave, gothic stuff. I love, like, word doesn't have at the moment enough like good, like honest rock and roll bands. That is like, for example, in a certain way, dying culture or part of like music subcultures. We need like proper like rock and roll bands, and we have some good, but it's mostly like leaning on the punk side. So we have good punk rock bands, but like this like a little bit like action rock, but even more like rock and roll stuff. And yeah,
who was the last good rock and roll band in your opinion?
What would I say? For example, I fucking love this Finnish. Eduardo is living in Finland, so it's Finnish band. So Flaming Sideburns was like fucking good rock and roll band, but they made a little comeback lately. But it was a little bit on the ballad side, the album. But and of course it was like a little bit on the action rock side. So it was not in a certain way. It wasn't pure rock and roll, but Flaming Sideburns was fucking good rock and roll band, especially live.
Yeah. I don't actually really know their music at all.
Yeah. Well, it's pretty much not that well-known band either way. Like they made, was it like 2 or 3 full-length albums and mainly sold in Finland and something, but very good. And
I was about to say Guns N' Roses also only made a couple of albums, and they were
Guns N' Roses was fucking good. Like when they did.
Well, dude, I asked you that question almost as a leading question because I think the last true great rock and roll band was Guns N' Roses in their prime. I mean, now they are no longer in their prime.
Yeah.
But you know, in the early '90s and the late '80s, I mean, they were a band really at the peak of their powers.
Yeah, it was. I really fucking love Guns N' Roses. Then I love Nirvana a fucking lot. But then again, I think Nirvana is not part of the grunge scene that much. I think most of their stuff is more like noise rock or something because of the use of like the fuzz pedals more than every other bands in that scene. So the best.
Well, I mean, I think In Utero, without a shadow of a doubt, is a much more noise rock record than it is a grunge record.
Yeah.
You know, I don't see how people can argue that. I mean, they will, but you know, it is absolutely a noise rock. And Bleach, you know, no comparison there. I mean, I think what Smells Like Teen Spirit, Nevermind, is that's maybe a bit more accessible. But it also still has some of those elements in. And I agree. I mean, I agree with you. I like Nirvana, and I think there are really fantastic moments across all of those records.
Yeah.
Where did the Spellgoth name come from? Like, how old were you when that started? Who gave it to you? Was it of your own design? Where did it come from?
14. I was when I started my first black metal band, and I just constructed it like out of some ideas I had, and it was phonetically good in my mouth, and I have heard a lot of like ha 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 funny laugh like Spellgoth and it is, but I don't fucking care, and it is since then, since I was 14, it's been my band name and will be.
And was that the same for your brother and his band name? Like, did he come up with that himself? Was that one that you bestowed on him?
He had different band name, like on the for Trollheim's Grot, and this all LRH is like, it's something that came along like a few years ago, and he likes to use it, and that's what sticks. So he has different band name in Dead Chain, for example. And
so tell me how the Nightshell Drapus project came about, because that's kind of it's from my understanding that's his baby, and you sort of became involved from a vocal perspective later on.
Well, it was somewhere around. I have it somewhere in my phone because my brother wanted to put on some kind of timeline, but I'm a little bit too lazy at the moment to find my phone. But I think it was year 2016 that he really started to like accelerate learning the guitar playing, and ended up making and composing those songs. And soon after that, he recorded everything for the songs and was thinking of suitable vocalists for that. Of course, like he was first thinking that not to do everything with the same group of people and that. But then it took years. There was some few candidates, ideas, which he was like asking, and there was interested, but then it just prolonged everything. And at some point he was just like, okay, I want you to sing on this album, and you do it now. And we answered, of course. We had been hearing the songs already like many years, and we had that you need to put this out. You need to just pick the singer and do this. And
I'm about to say, so he thought to himself, I already know one of the best of the best. I grew up with the man.
Don't know about the best of the best, but I know how he thinks, and it's easy to work with him in that sense. Sometimes it's very hard to work with him, but he gave us free hands. Basically, he takes care of the music, we take care of the lyrical concept and everything else.
And I think just to sort of maybe level set for people that don't know your music as well, like what was why did Lunatic Choir or the material on Lunatic Choir not, for example, end up on or as a Horna record? Like what is the distinction that you draw between Horna and between Nigel Drape?
Well, as you can hear, the album, it is very different from the Horna material, even though the latest Horna stuff have been varied stuff. It's not the like only one note stuff, and there's a lot more guitar work on than some of the earlier albums and that. But then again, the material is so much different from the Horna stuff. It's very, very much different band, so it's easy to put certain songs to like different bands. You always know from the start that this won't be for this band. This will be for this band.
Well, I mean, with the amount of material that both you and he write and turn out, though, like I look at other bands, and I think let's take Paradise Lost as an example, because I've floated this theory many times before. The last Paradise Lost record, I think that they put out, I think there was a crisis of what direction they wanted to go in, and I think they compromised on including some death metal stuff that maybe didn't really have a place on that record because they felt like fans had responded well to it on the previous two records. And I've looked at it often, and I've gone, when you're putting out material at that pace and that volume of material, like how much bleed over is there into the different projects? Like, is there ever a conscious decision to say, okay, now I'm going to focus on writing for this project. Now I'm going to focus on writing for this project. Or is it kind of like, I've got the inspiration to write something, and then once it's written, you go, okay, well, we'll figure out where it lands after that?
Well, I can speak only on my behalf, basically. So for me, it's very, like I said, I work on instincts. So if something starts brewing in my head, I usually instantly know for which project it is, and I start working it towards that direction, or let it grow to that direction. I can't remember have I ever worked in that way that I decide that I will do something for this now, because I never found it a good way to work for me to like push myself towards something. I let the instincts and pure feeling do the thing, and I follow that.
And lyrically, I mean, I know from the interviews I watched you do with our mutual friend Jerry. I mean, I know lyrically, obviously, there's a very strong occult bent towards it. When did you first become interested in the occult? Because that happened relatively, from my understanding, that would have happened relatively early in your life, correct?
Of course, it happened like kind of the shift was through black metal music. Nowadays, I'd say that even though if you took the black metal music out of me, I would still like be on the same kind of like spiritual path. So it's not anymore like they are not the same thing for me in that sense. But yeah, and one thing I have to say that I never been very much interested in reading other people's writings about the occult. Of course, some basic knowledge, of course, which is suitable for everybody who is on this path. But then again, like said, as I don't value humans that much, and every writing is everybody's own conception of what they see or how they feel. And like say, there's not two people see even the colors the same way. We perceive them differently. So how can you write things that would like resonate the same way? And it's so easy to lead like people astray, or be the kind of cult leader leading people to their own death. And there's always like you have to, and especially like when we are on the field of occult and things that are, well, for many people it's not good for their mental health. For example, they can very, very easily fall into certain kind of pits and not be able to crawl up back from those pits. So and then on the other hand, I have always been more inspired by like for example visual arts, which I really like read with seeing pictures, and I dive in those worlds which I see in like paintings, and same thing with the music. It's not many times it's not the lyrics that gives the general atmosphere. They are part of it, but it is the like full circle, every part of it that makes it the like kind of where I will dive in and get inspired, or I get some new ideas, or then I just deepen some kind of ideas through that. But I also try to keep my mind like as pure as possible out of like already written ideas and everything. As I, in a certain way, I have the urge to like dwell in my own visions and my own way of thinking, not to follow any like given ideals, or following some leaders.
So again, that kind of independent thinking, or that train of thought, how's that evolved as you've grown older? Because, again, I can relate to a lot of what you're saying. I also know from my own experience, I say this to people often, if I compare myself at the age of 20 to myself at the age of 30, or actually again at the age of 40, I think at my core there's still a lot of things about me that are very similar, but I have changed vastly on a lot of other things. And age certainly makes you wiser, but I also come across quite a lot of people, and I think it's those people that almost have this desperate need to be led, if that makes sense, rather than find their own way. Yeah, that do seem to kind of get stuck at a certain age. They still, you'll meet them, people that you went to school with, or people that you were friends with when you're in your 20s. You'll meet them 20 years later, and they're still talking about the same shit. They're still concerned about the same shit. There's no forward momentum, forward progress in their lives.
Yeah, I think there was a good thing in my youth that I didn't, basically, even though I fell in love with the black metal sound, I didn't go head first to the like, I'd say like I didn't go head first to the darkness when I was a teenager, because that is the age that you can really like lose yourself if you want to. You are very impulsive and do impulsive stuff, and that can reflect very poorly on the older age. So I'd say seeing many of my friends doing that, going that way, and nowadays they are not connected to this world anymore because they went headfirst to the darkness and saw it too dark for them. And basically I've been growing up towards the darkness, going older. So it's been like I've been on the path now like almost 30 years, and it's still, I don't see the end of the road in any way. And I'm still a seeker, I'm a listener, I'm an observer. And that is something I always like enjoyed having discussions with people when I like face to face and be there. So reading a book is very different like experience than sitting on a campfire or somewhere even in a cafe, even in a bar, because I never felt that I, for example, I can shut the world like next to me in an instant if I want. I can be really in a closed mindset, for example, in a full house bar if I want to, or if I end up in that kind of state. And for me, it's always been a like learning experience just to be able to like look into the eyes of different people and have the words exchanged more than the reading books and everything, because there is like the like truth, because they cannot hide between the pages and like words, because they can't hide their expressions or like motives the same way. So that is like how I've been like traveling this world towards where I'm now.
And so if you had to describe your view of the world, your view of life right now, I know that's a very loaded question, but like how would you kind of talk about where you are, in that journey right now? Let's put it that way.
Like I said, I really don't still know where I am, even though I've been on this path 30 years. I still find so much new things. I experience so much new things still on this age that it will be a never-ending journey. And seeing the like human life around me going on, it is everything just like in this normal life. It is like it's so kind of clear to me that everything goes in cycles. Like every big empire grow up and then at some point they fall. It is like throughout the history, it's been happening that way because there's human in that equation. It's
humanity can't abide by. They can't abide by perfection, or like my thinking has been they can't allow progress to go beyond a certain point until they start completely fucking it up. And I sometimes feel resentful about the fact that it feels to me like we're in the throes of a lot of people talk about the decline of Western civilization. I genuinely feel like we're in the throes of the fall of the empire. And sometimes it pisses me off that I'm here for that. I'm like, Jesus, could I just not have been ahead of the wave a little bit? I feel like the good wave, like if we're using a surfing analogy, the good wave has passed me by and I'm just sitting here waiting for the fucking the big one that smashes me into the rocks.
Yeah, but it's like we don't have to even like see it like on a bigger scale to have a like Roman Empire fall. It's like everything this happens in a smaller scale also, and it is like it's pretty much written on the like historic texts and everything. Everybody is always fearing that everything will fall apart around them, and it is happening all the time. And there's nothing different basically in this age than it was some other age before us. And it's mainly how you like. I've been like we are, for example, renovating an old farmhouse outside of the city area, and just move away from the hustle and bustle. And now living in this like in between situation where all the cassettes and CDs and vinyls are still on their shelf, but everything else is still packed and waiting to get that done someday. No idea when it will be done, but constructing.
And you've got I can hear a sound in the background, and for anybody listening to this on Spotify, that's not Spellgoth that's fallen asleep and snoring in between when I'm talking. That sounds to me, and I say that because there's somebody I work with who has one as well. That sounds very much to me like either an English bulldog or a bulldog of some sort. That
is an English bulldog.
I was about to say that I can hear a bulldog snore from a fucking mile away.
Yeah, she's 14 years old, so
yeah,
at the end part of her life.
Yeah, so I have we've got a Staffy pit bull who she's 13, and honestly, like I speak to my fiance about it often. I say to her like I've come to almost train my mind to really cherish every second that I spend with her. Like, in the morning, she's got a very set routine, jumps on the bed often, and when she jumps, hits my groin, and it's painful first thing in the morning. She's also a fucking lump. So, and when you're just about to get pissed off about it, you stop yourself and you go, well, in a year's time or 2 years' time, you're going to wish that that she was on you stomping your groin. But yeah, that's the sad thing about animals. I mean, I live out in the countryside as well. We've got a lot of animals. We've got 5 horses. Because my fiance has got a very soft heart. We've got 10 cats. So they don't all live in our house. So there's 2 properties on this yard. Her parents live in one house. We live in one house. Fortunately, most of the cats live in the other one. We've got 2 that live here with us. But yeah, I did say to her, it's amazing having all of them around us, but you also adopt an awful lot of heartache, because it's like they're all going to start going at about the same time. Not to bring the conversation down, but it's like it's more a case of appreciating, being able to spend time with that animal when you can spend time with them.
It is actually a good part of this conversation, but because I pretty much come in terms with the death also on my path, that I feel that even death of like close people to me or an animal, it's part of this cycle, and it is like that's why I take everything out of every day I have on this like pitiful life, that it makes sense to be here. So not to waste these kind of moments.
And I would say, if I could make an observation of society, I would say that to me is one of Western society's biggest problems, that they don't. I see too many people that don't remind themselves of the fact that life is finite. And I see them behaving in a way and thinking in a way and investing their energy and talking about bullshit and arguing about things on social media, just doing things that suggest to me that they've never once stopped to think that tomorrow this could all be over, or in a year's time or 2 years' time it could all be over. And when you're lying on your deathbed, are you going to sit thinking to yourself, man, I wish I'd carried on that Twitter argument, just a few more tweets longer. You know what I mean? It's just so fucking pointless. And I kind of, sometimes I look at it and it builds a real resentment. I get real resentment in me for people that think that way as well, because I'm like, there's so many people that value life much more highly than you and don't have the privilege of living as long as you do.
Yeah, and it is the like endless accumulation of money, and like, of course, money is power, but then again, to what ends? It is.
Well, you watch Scarface, power.
I think it's more of a like favorite movie of infection of our band, but I'm more of a documentary guy myself. But
I think the movie that probably describes my mindset towards many things in life best is There Will Be Blood. I put that movie, like, when it comes to my favorite films, like There Will Be Blood is there, and then way down to number 2 is The Exorcist, and everything starts counting down from There Will Be Blood. I've seen that movie easily now 80, 90 times, and I can't get enough of it. I just fucking love it.
I think my favorite movie is the Requiem for a Dream. It is a fine movie and even greater like soundtrack on it.
Incredible soundtrack.
Yeah.
Real feel-good movie, though. The last 15 minutes especially.
Well, describes humanity very much. Very good.
Oh, yes. Yeah. I saw that in a sold-out theater, and you could literally feel the audience gasp. Like, it was I mean, the last 15 minutes, most people listening to this will have seen the film. But the last 15 minutes, you could hear people go, just be fucking completely shocked. So, final question. It must surely be time for Horna to put out some new music at some point soon. Your last record was 2020, if I'm not mistaken.
Something like that, yeah. We have stuff ready. Yeah, and it is. We are just waiting when it comes out from the like vinyl factory to get the physical copies for it. So it's just a matter of like weeks or month or something that it should be out.
Oh, excellent. Okay, so that's like just around the corner then.
Yeah. It was like already composed before the COVID stuff, but like for some reason everybody felt that they are too busy to do anything on the COVID stuff. Everybody is complaining that no, there's nothing happening during the COVID, and we have like an album ready to be recorded, but everybody used the time for
everyone
something
was
else.
busy going out, taking their allotted 1 hour walk outside before the cops send you back home. So thank you so much for your time. This was a really, really fun conversation, and love Nightshell Drape Us. Very much looking forward to the next Horna record, and hopefully we bump into each other again down the road.
Yeah. Thank you.
Victoria!
That is a track called Ethereal Constrictor. It's taken from the Nightshell Drape's debut record, Lunatic Choir, available right now on Season of Mist. Massive thank you to Spellgoth for his time. And I hope you guys enjoyed that as much as I did recording it. Somebody who I just hit it off with and knew straight from the off I was going to like. And those tend to make for the best possible conversations. All right, let us talk now about some new music, because I've been threatening to do this for a while, so, I kind of feel like I need to hold myself to account here. First and foremost, there has been a self-titled debut released by a Norwegian band called Steinras, and this is what it sounds like. This is a project said to be many years in the making. Steinras' debut features 10 tracks, each recorded with a different vocalist. So, this is quite a special project in that regard. From my understanding, it's a one-off. But these aren't just any old corpse-painted rabble pulled off the street. It is a heavyweight lineup that includes Doods Admiral of Doodsvanger and Norgevel, Dolgar of Gehenna, who appeared on the podcast a couple of weeks ago, as well as Thomas Eriksson of Mork also makes an appearance. And fortunately, the album is about a lot more than just a superstar cast in the vocal booth. There is also a tidal wave of absolutely battering, relentless black metal riffing, courtesy of the Notvert guitarist Avon, who basically oversees most of what Steinras does. I think this comes across as very much a worthy celebration of true Norwegian black metal from bell to bell. In my opinion, it is elite tier listening, and it is available right now on Soul Cellar Records. Now, from Soul Cellar Records to another band that actually should have been and could have been, potentially might even will be in the future, on my independent band spotlight, Panzerkrieg 666. They've just put out a new EP called Westerweiterung. I sent this to Carl Hikara and to Marco, and they both came back with almost exactly the same response. These guys are asking for trouble with a name like that. That may be so, but lest anyone think otherwise, their lyrics probably have a lot more in common with bands like Conan and Feber and stuff like that than it does, anything sketch. The music is absolutely fucking badass, and you're going to get a whiff of it right now. So that was a clip of a song called My Uniform. There are 5 tracks in total that make up Westerweiterung, the new EP. And whilst each of them are pretty compact, they all come in at just under 4 minutes. They hit seriously hard, and I will say I discovered this on a Metal Trenches video a couple of weeks ago, and ever since then I've been listening to this at least once a day. Every single song is fast, it's fucking aggressive, it's relentlessly brutal, and it is super catchy. It is also, ironically, quite a nice antidote to the far more dense and the far more oppressive new Akhlys album. Now, I'm not going to go into a huge amount of detail on this because I did talk about my thoughts about this record last week with Sheriff Mike Scondato on the news rant. If you missed that episode, go back and watch it this instant. And again, let me preface all of what I'm about to say by going back to that review and mentioning that I said at the time this was the front runner for my favorite album of 2024. That has certainly not changed. If anything, more listens just re-emphasize that point, in my opinion. Like I had come into this with incredibly high expectations, and this album beat them all. Those high expectations, of course, came from Akhlys' previous record, Melano, put out in 2020, an album that I have come to love more and more as time has gone on, and I probably would have made my favorite album of 2020 if I could have the time over again. But that's the thing with lists. At some point, hindsight's always going to catch up to you. Be that as it may, House of Black Geminis I thought was going to be great, but it turned out to be way greater than my expectations. I think a couple of key differences between this record and between Melano. First of all, there is a step up in atmosphere and I would just say space on the record. Space in that if you go to the opening song on the album, for example, The Mask of Night Speaking, Nas Alchemeth, the Akhlys main man, kind of allows that song the time it needs to really build up and kind of get to a point where when it finally explodes about 3.5 minutes in, it hits you like an absolute ton of bricks. There's greater use of electronic elements to what I've heard him do before. But the great thing about it is, even though electronic elements are more prevalent, and I would say the Bloedhaus Noord influences, particularly Bloedhaus Noord going back to Dialogue with the Stars, that era of the band, whilst those are more prevalent on this album, you can still hear at its core, this is a record produced by a guy who is very much steeped in old school black metal tradition. So it is atmospheric and dark, and it is quite avant-garde at times, but it is fucking nasty and gnarly and all of the great things about some of the rawest and grimmest black metal that we all love. Conceptually, you can go back to the episode of Soul Knox. As I said, Carl Hikara did a really good breakdown with Nas of what every single song means. It's a pretty heavyweight concept, but it also has some pretty heavyweight music to match. I think the other thing to mention about this record is the density of what's being done here is just mind-boggling. I don't know how many tracks Nas was working with at any given time, but I would suggest probably most of these songs are 40 plus. It can sometimes make the production feel a little too loud and a bit almost overwhelming, but just overall to me this is a winner. That being said, I completely get why it's not going to be to everyone's taste, and what I'm picking up on the socials very much is some people either really love this album or some people just are completely oblivious to it. They just don't want to know. They just think it sucks. It's definitely not a record that you're going to be able to get or be able to love if you don't absorb it in one sitting and properly concentrate. You don't throw this on for 5 minutes, have it blaring in the background while you sip a beer with the lads. You really need to pay attention to what's going on here. If you invest the time, I think it pays dividends. If you're not willing to invest the time, there's plenty of other stuff for you to listen to in 2024. For me personally, House of the Black Geminis is a masterpiece. Does it beat Melano? Maybe. We're going to find out what one of the songs sounds like on the record right now. This is a track called Eye of the Demon. Eye of the Demon is the name of the song, the band is Akhlys, and the album is House of the Black Geminis, available right now on Deborah Morty Productions. A fantastic year for that label, and a fantastic year for Akhlys, because in all likelihood, this is going to be my number one record of 2024. There's no point even beating about the bush. There's some variables that could be, that could mix things up a little bit. Maybe something that comes from left field later on in the year. But for now, I think I've got my top three pretty much set. You know what two of the bands are that are on that list. The one, I think you can guess. But I'm not going to say anything. I will also be having that band on the show at some point in the future as well. So if you can guess, you might be able to guess who the guest is going to be. And then, of course, Nas Alchemeth of Akhlys is going to be a guest on Into the Necrosphere again at some point, hopefully pretty soon. Carl on Soul Knox did such a great job of that track-by-track breakdown of the album. I'm going to need to think of something else that I can do that supplements that, or is at least different. Gives you guys a different side to Nas than maybe Carl was able to offer. But either way, you need to go back and listen to that episode. You need to check out House of the Black Geminis and give it a chance. Like I said, it's not for everybody, but for those whom this music speaks to, you're going to find this an absolutely extraordinary work, as I did. Right now, my friends, if you spent more than 2 seconds laughing at this Hawk Tour bullshit that I see all over the internet, then it's time for you to hit the bricks, because this is my weekly news rant.
A roundabout for judgment. And hang them where the world can see.
All right, folks, we kick off on metalstorm.net as always. Tragedy, unfortunately, marks our very first news headline. Wormrot have split with their drummer. It says here, following their midsummer European tour, Singapore grindcore act Wormrot is currently a solo project for the time being, after their drummer Vijesh Gariwala and guitarist, founding member Raisyed Juraimi, I think is how I'm going to pronounce his name, have decided to go their separate ways. I believe there is a message that's been shared here. Yes, I'm correct. After much reflection and mutual respect, Vijesh and I have decided to part ways. We're grateful for the journey we've shared, and we look forward to new opportunities individually. I'd like to thank Vijesh for his years of contribution and everyone for believing in us along the way. I will carry on to build Wormrot from the ground up again. I think Wormrot are an overrated band, and I, for one, won't be losing any sleep over this recent announcement. Spiral Grave have put out a new song. It's called Lung Full of Blood. I do quite like the name of the song. It sounds quite gnarly, sounds badass. It says here, before their new studio release, Ill Repute, finally drops this coming Friday through Argonauta Records, the US Doom Lords Spiral Grave have premiered a brand new track titled Lung Full of Blood. They've only been around for one album to date, as far as I know. So I think Doom Lords is potentially slightly exaggerating the point. But that being said, I do recall their debut record, Legacy of the Anointed, being not bad. It wasn't amazing, but it wasn't rubbish either. It certainly suggested that there was some promise and there was some potential there. So let's hear what Lung Full of Blood sounds like. I feared the worst during that very trite opening with somebody basically just fucking around with a guitar and some effects pedals, and then when the song kicked in, the verse was passable. I like the guitar tone. I think the capability of the vocalist isn't bad, but I think the problem is very much in the execution of things that are going on here. It's just a song that never quite comes together for me. The verse is reasonable. That chorus is nowhere. It just sounds like they had this idea. I don't know whether they potentially sat down and came up with a song title, Lung Full of Blood, and thought, that sounds really cool, let's write a whole song around it. But it just feels lazy. That chorus feels shoehorned in. There's no payoff, there's no hook, there's no big melody, there's nothing to catch you. And then it then boils down to whether or not you spend your time, or you invest your time listening to something like Spiral Grave, or you simply go out and you listen to the new High on Fire album for what would in my case be probably the 100th time. Or even better, you go back and listen to the entire High on Fire discography. There's just a lot of other bands I would much rather listen to that play the same style of music. So a bit of a damp squib, this new Spiral Grave song. I'll still give the new album a listen when it comes out, but this is lacking in imagination. It's probably my biggest criticism, yeah. All right, Mayhemic have got a new album coming out soon, their debut, as a matter of fact. When I initially saw the name Mayhemic, for various reasons, I suddenly thought, Mayhem, new album. But sadly, I was to be let down and disappointed. It says here, Blackened Thrashers from Chile, Mayhemic, will release their debut studio album, Toba, on July the 26th via Sepulchral Voice Records. The 8-piece music effort was recorded, mixed and mastered by Sebastian Puente at Audio Custom. Probably the best thing I can say about this so far is that Sepulchral Voice Records has put out a couple of reasonable albums in the past. The name Mayhemic is fucking awful. I don't know why you would call it would be like calling your band Metallicon or Metallic. There's a band called Mayhem. Don't name your band something that sounds that close to, what probably is your source material, certainly your inspiration. And then, the album cover looks pretty lame too. Anyway, let's hear what the actual song sounds like, and then see whether or not that bile was misdirected. That's going to earn a thumbs down from me as well. A lot of conviction in what they are playing. I think the drummer knows his way around the kit, but unfortunately that's about where it ends for me. The riff I have heard a million times over. This is about as recycled as it gets. The vocal style I find to be annoying at best, and I think that among the many tropes that ought to be retired, that drum roll intro that a lot of bands use, and for some reason, I may be wrong on this, but it feels to me like it's becoming more prolific. That's just something that bands need to stop altogether. If you don't know how to start a song, maybe it's not worth recording the song to begin with. Maybe you're not quite there yet with a song. This is just, it feels unimaginative to me, and it just feels like I've heard this 1,000 times over, and it's just not something that I think is worth listening to any further, essentially. What I would say, by the way, as we were talking about Sepulchral Voice, two bands on that label that are definitely worth your time. Black Curse out of Denver, Colorado. They've got a record out called Endless Wound. I really enjoyed that. And then Grave Miasma, I've raved about on this podcast many times over. They have got two records out. The most notable being Abyss of Wrathful Deities that they put out in 2021, which I think is absolutely magnificent. So if you haven't listened to that yet, it comes with my ringing endorsement. Okay, let's move on. Bellacore are writing new songs. Bellacore's last studio album was released in October 2021. The Australian progressive melodic death metal masters reveal news that they are currently in songwriting mode for their next music output. No songs, just a picture of a keyboard. And I can't recall whether or not I've played Bellacore on the podcast before. So again, calling them the masters, I'm not so sure about that. Grave Noir are streaming a brand new track to promote their upcoming debut album, Devant la Porte des Etoiles. And again, sorry everyone in France. Anyway, French black metal operatives Grave Noir reveal a video clip for the first single called France de l'Ombre. The new outing will be released through Season of Mist on the 23rd of August 2024. I probably sound more Spanish than I sound French there, but anyway, fuck it. Let's just hear what this new Grave Noir track sounds like. I let that one run on a little bit longer than I normally would because it was actually very intriguing. It started off and I wasn't quite there, and then when the song really sort of hit its stride, maybe around the 1 minute mark, I started to go, I can actually feel what these guys are doing. The production is maybe a little bit thin for my tastes. I do prefer something that's maybe a little bit more bassy and just packs a bit more punch. I feel there could be more to this than I'm hearing, but I like the old school vibe to it. The old school sound and melody that they've used in that main riff, I think is very, very cool. I think the vocals are great. Perhaps it's benefiting from the fact that I just heard two songs I didn't like back to back, but so far this is very promising. It gets a thumbs up from me. I'm not quite ready to lavish upon it the greatest accolade in the history of music. That accolade, of course, being the accolade of top notch. But it gets a thumbs up. Like I said, the things I like about it are strong enough to carry the song to that place and to make me want to hear more. Nice melody, nice old school touch, great vocals. It's been a reasonably good year for French black metal overall. Mutilation brought out Black Metal Cult unexpectedly, 2 days after my birthday, no less. And I kind of feel like that album hasn't necessarily gotten the flowers that it deserves. And then another album I feel is maybe flying under the radar a little bit more than it ought to, the new Merrimack. That came out on March the 8th. It's called Of Grace and Gravity. That was also put out by Season of Mist, and I think it's fucking fantastic. Yeah, if you've not paid much attention to the Merrimack record in particular, then make sure you change that. But both I would strongly recommend. And Grave Noir sounds like it could be a reasonably good addition to France's innings for 2024. Okay, next up we've got Deceased. The Virginia-based death thrash veterans Deceased are ready to return with their new long player, Children of the Morgue. That drops on August the 30th, 2024 through Hell's Headbangers. Additional details and the first preview track can be checked out via Bandcamp below. Pretty freaky looking album art, but I quite dig it. And Deceased, they've been a band I've spent various portions of my life either being completely indifferent to or mildly enjoying. I mean, I remember them, going all the way back to the Nuclear Blast, Death Is Just the Beginning days. I can't remember if they were on the Corporate Death sampler that Relapse put out, very infamous compilation that a lot of people got into a lot of bands through. And then, I think, I can't remember whether they were on there or whether they were on Death Is Just the Beginning 3. But either way, I've made my thoughts on Deceased known. Let's hear what they sound like in 2024. So, okay, let's get the obvious out of the way first. This isn't death metal anymore. So I think the way they should be described is Virginia-based former death, current thrash veterans, Deceased. That's definitely more thrash than it is death metal. You guys tell me what you think, but that's my view on it. I think that it is. I think the actual song is fucking great. That opening riff I felt was maybe a little too mellow for my tastes, but when the actual song kicks in, when the vocals are going, that's when it really becomes very, very enjoyable. I think the riffing is catchier than a case of crabs. I love that it goes through all these twists and turns that you kind of never, you sort of don't know where it's going to go from one side to the next. Yeah, loving it. Really, really, really enjoy this. It's aggressive. It's infectious. I think it's cleverly written, and for a band who have been together as long as Deceased to put out an album that sounds like this, kudos to them. Genuinely, I now feel like I need to go back and I need to dig into some of the previous Deceased records, because I may have been missing out on something great. We're going to give this another 60 seconds, but I think it's safe to say this definitely earns top notch for me. I love that last bit that we just listened to there. It's this totally left field, slightly dark, like almost slightly black metal sound that they throw in there. And it just hits you out of nowhere. It's not something you'd expect to hear on a Deceased song. At least I don't. Yeah, I love it. I think it just elevates the track. It is 7 minutes, 40 seconds long. So I feel like there may be some very mild hints of or towards the progressive side here as well. I'd need to hear the whole thing, obviously, to know that for sure. But the first 2 minutes and however much long I listened to it for, I think sounded fucking excellent. And again, if there's anything in the band's back catalog that you think I really need to make sure I listen to, I'm just going over some of the releases on Metal Archives right now. Supernatural Addiction gets 91%. As the Weird Travel On, that gets 87%. Surreal Overdose, 92%, and that's out of 7 reviews. So it kind of sounds like there's some gold in them there hills. Maybe Justin Horval over at Hell's Headbangers runs such a tight ship. These guys were terrified of putting anything substandard out, lest he take them to task, take them to the woodshed, as they say. But yeah, really like that. Let's move on, folks. Mog's Motel have a song called Apple Pie. I kind of feel like I know this is going to be fucking awful, but just because I have already read the headline, let's hear what it sounds like. Mog's Motel are British hard rockers, apparently, and they recently shared their newest single, Apple Pie, as part of their forthcoming debut self-titled record. A brief glimpse at some of the members in the band suggests that they probably have a very limited amount of time in which to release their debut record before death comes calling. But it says here, the newly formed band featuring Philip Mogg of UFO, Tony Newton of KK's Priest and Voodoo 6, Neil Carter of UFO, and Gary Moore, among others. Like I said, I fear the worst, but let's listen to it anyway. That is extreme shite, I believe, is the only way to properly describe that. And yes, I know, excuse me, UFO and fucking whoever else they come from, has a legacy. I don't automatically respect legacy bands. I just don't. I think that's something that should be stamped out in the metal scene, because it is what leads to the mediocrity that so many big name bands keep putting out and keep getting away with, quite frankly. Because there's almost this natural inclination, or this natural tendency to say, oh, it's great because it's band X, when actually it fucking stinks, and the band wouldn't be signed had they not had the legacy behind them, or the legacy supporting them. But yeah, that's awful. Ireful unleash evil genius. Italian thrashers Ireful have launched a visualizer video of the song Evil Genius as a second advanced single from their upcoming debut album Agents of Doom, which will see the light of day on July the 16th through Extreme Music. I'm just going to say that every time I see extreme music from now on. Extreme music. I don't know who Ireful are. I do know that extreme music have a tendency to put out fucking nonsense. But let's hear what this sounds like. Maybe they can change my mind. Maybe they can salvage the median quality levels over at extreme music. Tell you what, I had a extreme music zinger just ready to go, and now I find myself having to cut out my own bullshit, because that's actually a pretty cool song. I think the vocals could be a little better. They are helped somewhat by the gang vocals. You guys know I'm very partial to them gang vocals, but that riff can't be faulted. That is a fucking spicy-ass riff. And the song overall has a cool feel to it. It sounds very old school, deliberately so, but executed in a way that works. Like, there's a lot of old school sounding bands that we listen to on the news rant that just sound like a bunch of fucking nonsense. It sounds like, guys getting together in a band room, playing some songs that sound like other bands, and, some label somewhere picks it up. This does, it certainly wears its influences on its sleeve, but there's just enough of a twist to it to keep me interested. So, yeah, I'm liking it. I'm going to give it a thumbs up, I think. But I do want to get another 60 seconds as well.
Come forth, but sound on your stats. Fascinate by horror and grab for death. What's in the forest? What's in the cure? Who could die anymore? After I'm done. And nothing can swear it's a used one wrong. Of a dream and urge. Devils! Fantasy rap!
That is such an Exodus breakdown, but I fucking love it. Well done to these guys. Will I upgrade that thumbs up to a top notch? I'm not sure, but I really like it. I think that's very, very cool. You need to appreciate it for what it is, but yeah, I very much appreciate what they've done there. Okie doke, folks. Let's check out what else we've got. Kublai Khan to embark on a European tour in early 2025. Kublai Khan, a very badass hardcore band, endorsed by the great Sheriff Mike Scandato, and he was not wrong. I checked it out, and I fucking love it. Horned Almighty's new long player streaming in full. Horned Almighty's new album, Contagion Zero, is out today. Put it on my list of records to listen to. Both songs we've heard on the news rant so far have been magnificent. But most of my time has been taken up by that new Akhlys record. So I will talk in more detail about this album once I've been able to spend some proper time with it. Blood God share a new song. It says here, Blood God have revealed the Draken Legion Belgoroth version single featured on the band's upcoming studio album Dracul Dracoroth, out on September the 20th, 2024 via Massacre Records. Let's give it a listen.
Der Horizont steht in Flammen. Seht die Verdammten. Seit Äonen im Kampf mit Dämonen. 10.000 marschieren in die Schlacht. Donner und Stahl, Donner und Krieg. Erschaffen Krieg, Maschinenkrieg. Gebunden durch Blut, getrieben durch Wut.
I get the impression that this sounded a lot heavier and a lot better in the minds of its creators than it actually sounded like when they recorded it. Perhaps they hear it now and they go, man, it just didn't come out quite like I thought it was going to. But as far as I'm concerned, this stinks. It stinks about as much as I imagine those outfits that they were parading around in would stink after shooting that music video. There's just nothing to it that's in any way heavy, exciting, aggressive. Yeah, it just does nothing for me whatsoever. And that's about the nicest thing I can say about it. So, anyway, let's move on. The Spirit have put out a new track. It's called Spectres of Terror. German metal group The Spirit are premiering Spectres of Terror, the newest preview track from their Songs Against Humanity record. The latter sees its official release on October the 25th, 2024 through AOP Records. Let's hear what it sounds like.
Misery when the past
Both of the Spirit's previous records, Cosmic Terror, that they put out back in 2020, and then Of Clarity and Galactic Structures that came out in 2022, they were both good records when I heard them. They both came very highly recommended, but they just never quite did enough for me personally to kind of keep them at the very upper echelons of the playlist, of the rotation. So I kind of feel like this record seems destined for the same thing. But I don't hate the song. I feel like maybe some of those classical heavy metal influences that they use, and that I think on certain parts of the song, certainly the 90 seconds we've listened to so far, it really comes to the fore. I think that might be what kind of puts me off a little bit. I don't mind classical heavy metal, especially new wave of British heavy metal stuff, which I think is what they're drawing on most here. But I feel like unless it's used in a certain way, unless there's a lot of other things to complement it, it can sometimes detract from the intensity of the song rather than actually add something to it, if that makes sense. And I kind of feel that's what we're encountering here. It's not a bad song, but it's just not a song that's making the hair on the back of my neck stand up. That being said, let's give it another 60 seconds. So, the preceding, or the 1 minute and 10 seconds we just listened to, way better than the beginning of the song. That kind of mid-tempo break that they had in there, I thought was really, really cool. And then that bridge that we just got through now, thought hit the nail on the head as well. Shirked some of the, or kind of sidestepped the new wave of British heavy metal influences, and was all the better for it. These guys clearly know what they're doing. And again, I think for the right audience, this is probably one of the best things they've heard all year. But for me, it's just it doesn't quite land probably as well as it would for others. But that being said, what I just heard, I liked a lot more than the beginning of the song. So I will definitely keep an eye out for the whole thing when it does get released. Let's see whether or not it can break into what is a very competitive field in 2024. Update on a new album from Blackie Lawless, and of course, by new album we're talking about a new Wasp album. In a recent interview with Meltdown of Detroit's WRIF radio station, Wasp frontman Blackie Lawless has offered an update on the band's long-awaited follow-up to 2015's Golgotha, which will likely not be released before 2025, as progress on it has been slow, with Lawless himself citing recent and upcoming tour schedules and his back injury from last year as factors. On the new album's progress, Lawless has said, "We are still working on it. What happened was we came back from the European tour. I had to have surgery, and about a year prior to that, we had been working on a lot of new stuff. When I came back, I've had a long time to go through those early demos of what we've been working on, listening to it with fresh ears, I should say. Some of it's really good, but there's not enough on there yet where I could be comfortable in saying, okay, this is finished and let's go with it." Blah, blah, blah. Get in 6 months, top to bottom, get that thing cranked out. Because like I said, if you don't, you end up running the risk of it kind of being a schizophrenic type record where you've got one type of thing and then the other half is something else and it has no real cohesiveness. For the inspiration behind the record, Blackie reveals, when we got ready to start this record a couple of years ago, my mindset was I wanted to do a heavy, nasty, stinky rock and roll record. That's where my heart was at, but when I started to write, that's not what was coming out. And so when you first start the process, you think, okay, we'll go along with whatever comes out to begin with, but I want to try steering the ship in a different direction as time goes by, and that is not just what's happening, or that is just not what is happening. It was stuff that was more in depth, and I thought we did call Golgotha. That's one of those thinking man's records, thinking man's music, and I thought I don't want to do that this time. I want to do something a little lighter. Blah, blah, blah. Sounds to me, long story short, like it's going to sound like Golgotha, which is a shame because I thought that album was fucking nonsense and was unbefitting of the impressive legacy, the somewhat underrated legacy, underappreciated legacy left behind by Wasp. Hammerfall have presented a brand new single called Freedom. One of the greatest tragedies of my time involved in the music industry was going out with the dudes from Hammerfall to the legendary Garlic and Shots pub in London, having a fucking blast with those dudes. They were some of the nicest guys ever, and then having to review their album and not call it the biggest pile of fucking crap on the face of the earth. Because that is truly how I felt hearing it. There's nothing that they could possibly do to convince me that they make good music, but they are the nicest guys on earth. I just cannot, for the life of me, get into what it is that they do. Imperia have revealed a new track. It looks from the band photo as though Imperia are 3 guys caught reading pornography by their mother, who's photographed front and center of the band pic. Reach My Tears, the new preview tune from Imperia's next full-length installment, Dark Paradise, has premiered online in the form of an official music video. The new outing comes out on July the 26th through Massacre Records. Let's listen. This is beyond just being shite. This is total and utter shite from start to finish. I don't know how. I've to each their own. But I have never understood how this kind of music became a thing. It became a subgenre all on its own in metal. You know, the metal scene that I discovered and stumbled into, it did always have a bit of an edginess to it and a bit of meanness to it, and also a masculine energy. Now, I'm not saying that it should be, alpha males, and toxic masculinity all around. That's not the case whatsoever. There's women that are doing great stuff in heavy music. But this kind of, and this is true whether it's a man singing or a woman, this poppy, fucking folksy trash that bands brought into heavy music around the mid to late 90s, and just for whatever reason seem to become more and more popular. I don't understand it. I've never understood the appeal to it. It's not aggressive. It's not heavy. it just sounds fucking stupid. It sounds like a complete waste of time. Like I can't envision an audience that actually would like this, because it's not, it's not mellow enough to land well with a pop crowd or the rock crowd. It's not indie enough to land with those fucking, Glastonbury going, cardigan wearing motherfuckers. And then it's certainly not heavy enough to appeal to someone like me, or any one of the Legion, I would argue. So I just don't know who gets into it. And yet, though, I have seen video evidence, to my fucking dismay, of shows, festivals, where there are grown men dancing to this fucking crap. I don't get it. Anyway, let's see if we can dig up a little palate cleanser, and one is grabbing my eye right now. There's a new God Dethroned record on the way. God Dethroned are releasing their brand new full-length The Judas Paradox. Dutch death metal legends God Dethroned are pleased to disclose details and the first single in connection with their new album release. It's entitled Judas Paradox, landing in stores on September the 6th, 2024 via Reigning Phoenix Music. It was recorded and mixed by Henry Sattler at Woodland Park in the Netherlands. Henry, of course, was on the podcast way back. I think I'm going to take a guess and say it was like episode 21 or something. But what a nice guy. And it's been a hot minute since God Dethroned put out anything. So I'm curious to hear what this sounds like. The single they've put out is called Rat Kingdom. So let's give it a spin. I like this song, but there is this track to me highlights the danger, and I'm going to assume, because I don't say it here, but I'm going to assume when they say recorded and mixed by Henry Sattler, I'm going to assume that it was also Henry that produced this. And when you produce your own band, there's no one in that studio to tell you that sounds like a load of fucking crap. Get it out of the song. And that part at the beginning of the track where he goes, Rat Kingdom, awful. If I were the producer, I would have immediately have taken that out. Even if the band insisted on it, I would have edited it out in any case when the masters get done, because it sounds cringeworthy, and it's such a shame because the rest of the song is excellent. Real vintage God Dethroned, and I've really liked the vast majority of stuff this band has put out, particularly their last couple of albums. I thought that they nailed it on the last record, Illuminati, The Will to Blaze. I liked a lot. Under the Sign of the Iron Cross, phenomenal. And this sounds like it has all the makings of a great God Dethroned album, but for that sequence. And as I said, it's just I'm always cautious, or at least to me, there's always a slight red flag when a band announces that they've, self-produced a record, because my feeling is always you should have that external party in the studio with you to say, I don't think that works, just to get you out from the the mesh of weeds that you find yourself in. Like if you've been ensconced in particular material for a 6-month period or a 12-month period, like a lot of these people are, it's difficult sometimes to see things for what they are. And I think especially when you are, you've been doing this for quite a while, I think you need people to challenge you on, some of your creative direction, some of your creative thinking. Metallica are a great example of that. I mean, I know they claim that people are helping them produce, but let's be honest. I don't think they've had a producer in at least 4 albums that's told them that fucking blows. They certainly didn't have a producer for Saint Anger. Because, I know Dickweed Bob Rock took credit for that, probably earned a fuckload of money, pretending to have produced it. But there was no production done there. No one is sitting there saying, hey, I don't think this works. Hey, by the way, you know what I think would be a great idea? To have drums that don't sound like fucking dustbin lids. Not saying that God Dethroned are guilty of that in this instance, but you know what I mean. Just if I could give a band any advice whatsoever, if I managed bands, I would say none of your own production. Have somebody in the studio that just keeps you on the straight and narrow. Okay, folks, let's head over to the Democrats' Guide to Rock Music, and let's see what they've got to say. We were talking about Metallica earlier. Metallica's James Hetfield loans 6 vintage cars to the Nebraska Museum. That's a hell of a collection. Forbidden part ways with guitarist Steve Smith, and they have replaced him with Voivod's Daniel Mongrain. Reactivated San Francisco Bay Area thrash metal veterans Forbidden have parted ways with guitarist Steve Smith. Stepping in for Smith is his temporary replacement for Forbidden's next batch of European dates, namely Voivod's Daniel Mongrain. Steve said in a statement, hey everybody, I've said this before in my career, but all things do reach their end at some point. As hard as this is to write it, I've decided it's time to part ways with Forbidden and return to my band, One Machine, as priority. Along with other projects on the horizon, and of course session work and teaching music as always. Doesn't really matter either way. I do really like Forbidden, and I'm very, very much looking forward to hearing what they do next. That last Forbidden record, the one that had, and I can't remember whether the album was called it also. Omega Wave. What I was going to mention was the opening track on that album, Forsaken at the Gates. Chef's kiss, as my friend Ralph Schmidt would say. Just brilliant. Just absolutely top tier thrash metal. So yeah, very much looking forward to what they do next. I'm even a fan, and I know I am in the minority on this one, but I'm even a fan of the very controversial Green album that Forbidden did. If you go back and you check out the first 2-3 tracks off of that album, What Is the Last Time, Green and Fat, fucking fantastic in my opinion. Fantastic. It is a bit of a product of its day because it kind of had a little bit of a Alice in Chains vibe to it. But with enough thrash in there to make it very cool, and it's fucking heavy. It's there's kind of a viciousness to it in a different way maybe to what you were used to Forbidden doing before. Okay, Ryan Adams releases a cover of Corrosion of Conformity's "Clean My Wounds." Pepper Keenan reacts. Ryan Adams, of course, a bit of a bad boy. He's been caught up in the whole Me Too scandals, and actually, by the sounds of things, his was quite a legitimate case. This wasn't like a Amber Heard, Johnny Depp thing. I mean, I don't know for sure, but yeah, it sounds like there was some shady business going on there, shall we say. But apparently, Borry and Blabbermouth have forgiven him, because they are letting us hear what the song sounds like and not just giving this the old ignore. I do like Ryan Adams' music. Not all of it, but sometimes it hits well, and I like me some Corrosion of Conformity. So let's hear what the Clean My Wounds cover sounds like.
I see the world with bloodshot eyes, streets filled with blood from distant lives. Dogs of war never compromise, no real time for rearranging. Help me, Jesus, help me clean my wounds. He said I cannot heal that kind. Bleeding soul becomes a bitter mind. Oh, he said it happens every time. Knock it down, that's how the story goes. Knock it down in a land of 1,000 no's. Knock it down, I'm all over you. In time, my mind is changing.
Love it. Absolutely love it. So it says here, a North Carolina native who grew up on punk rock and heavy metal, Adams told blabbermouth.net about his decision to cover the track. Some folks have sports teams they follow for life through thick and thin. For me, that's COC. In memory of Pepper's father passing, I covered Clean My Wounds in New Orleans and the Carolinas. They mean more to me than I could ever say. Most COC fans feel the same way. COC are always and will always be my team, and I'll fly the flag forever. Pepper was equally full of praise for Adams, saying, I've been a friend and fan of Ryan's music and skills for a very long time. COC and Ryan sharpened our teeth in the same neck of the woods in the Old North state as youngsters. I considered Ryan to be one of the best singer-songwriters out there. Knew it back then, still do. To hear him do his things to one of our songs is in such a beautiful and haunting way, as well as dedicating it to my father, was quite moving to say the least. Honestly stopped me dead in my tracks. Very special on many levels and emotions. Thank you for that, brother. Love and respect always. Fuck yes. For anybody that didn't see it, Pepper's father passed away in June, and Pepper wrote a really, really beautiful post on Instagram that honestly, gave me a bit of a lump in the back of my throat. Because, I'm of that age now where at some point, I'm going to have to make that journey to South. Excuse me. What I was saying was, I'm of that age now where I'm going to have to make that journey to South Africa for the last time, and it's a fucking scary thought. And you also start to when you pass 40, as most of you guys know, because I know what the demographics are of the people that listen to Into the Necrosphere. You get past the age of 40, you start thinking about what you're going to leave behind, how you're going to be remembered, and things like that. And when I read that piece that Pepper had written for his dad, I thought to myself, if that's what your son says about you, the day that you pass away, the day that you pass on to the next world, that's a life that has been well lived. Absolutely. So Pepper probably doesn't listen to Into the Necrosphere, but my condolences to him. And what a nice thing to do by Ryan Adams, doing that song and doing such a beautiful cover. So okay, let's do one more, and then we will wrap up the news rant for the week. Last week, we probably won't use this as the final article, but I should just mention it. Ian Asprey says the cult still performs with so much passion. I was talking to Sheriff Mike Scondado about this obviously last week and could not agree more. What a fucking excellent band. Evergreen, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, they just keep on doing great music. Their last album was absolutely magnificent. I've yet to see them live, but I am going to definitely have to change that. Everything I've seen so far that they've done of late has been brilliant, and going back and listening to those old Southern Death Cult records, or Death Cult record, I should say, fucking fantastic. The Offspring's supercharged album contains one thrash metal song, says Noodles. Yes, if thrash metal were written by Joe Biden. The Offspring, in my view, one of the worst bands possibly to ever have graced the face of the earth. I put them right up there with Coldplay on the steaming pile of shit heap. And then on top of that, no doubt as they release this new record, we'll be blessed with their accurate and sharp and succinct and really rebellious political views every fucking chance they get. But by the way, I should also mention they released one single off of that record, and it truly might be one of the worst things I've ever heard. I mean, it is. If you thought their previous stuff was shit, this is on next level stuff. They looked at that and they said, no way, we're gonna make this sound like fucking Pantera's Far Beyond Riven, and went out and recorded just the most fucking ass backward but saccharine sweet pile of shit ever. Right, ex-Cro-Mags frontman John Joseph on the message of his new book, Destroying Monsters. It's never hopeless. This is a man I would love to have on this podcast. I would probably have to come with an advisory that it's going to be a little spicy. But in a new episode of Occupy the Void, the podcast about mental health, making music, and staying alive, hosted by Christina Rowat, former Cro-Mags frontman John Joseph spoke about his book called Destroying Monsters. The first half of the book talks about Joseph's own struggles with addiction, while the second half talks about techniques and skills Joseph uses for staying clean. Asked what he hopes readers will take away from reading the book, Joseph said, "It's never hopeless, because no matter how low we are, people talk about, oh, I was rock bottom. You can actually be, you can go be under the rocks, you can go be fucking lower than I was below rock bottom. When I first got off those drugs, somebody tried to murder me in a fucking crack house and took everything. No matter how hopeless it seems, there's always a way to climb out from wherever." That's the message of the book. He's a great dude. I follow him on the socials. You know, he's not necessarily everybody's cup of tea. Has a few ideas that are bound to rub people the wrong way. But, you know, I do tend to find myself agreeing with him on a fair few things. Aside from the fact that he's vegan, that's never gonna cut the mustard with me. You either eat steak or you're gonna have a difficult experience coming to my house for dinner. But anyway, friends, on that note, I'm going to wrap up for this week. Thus concludes another episode of Into the Necrosphere. Episode 233 is in the books. I will be back same time, same place next week, Tuesday. Guest to be confirmed. Whatever it is you are doing, Legion, and wherever it is that you are, stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll see you bad motherfuckers again next week.